been a minute. Hello, my name is Julia, and I am not the Nordic plant girl anymore. The channel is officially now called the Julia Braga Grows. Braga, it's such a weird way to pronounce my name, and I will explain at the end of the video why. But today we're really going to talk about soil mixture. I had a comment at some point and I was like, ooh, I should make a video about this because people really struggle with finding the right soil mix. When you start out, I think it's really common to end up just going with whatever the shop tells you. But they are usually thinking of like how they can better manage their own space and not really specifically the kind of environment you will have at home. And they really can't know that unless you've done your own research, you've done some tests. And we're going to talk about all of this now. Where do we start? The first thing that you have to consider is where you live. Externally from your house, you will have certain weather conditions. So for example, Finland has which is where I live, defined seasons, and they affect the way that environment indoors will look like. For example, during winter, because the heaters go on, the temperature goes up, then we have less humidity inside and I have to use a humidifier, and this is the one that I use, not just for the plants but for myself as well. It's healthy to have a humid air. During summer, however, the weather is humid and it's warmer, and I rarely need a humidifier to keep things above 50% relative humidity. Humidity affects how fast your soil will dry out. If you have high humidity, you probably can get away with also using terracotta pots. Therefore, your mix can be a little bit more chunky. It doesn't have to retain as much of the water that you pour. When it comes to my situation where we have this fluctuation in humidity and temperature, I need to be careful with my watering. I need to be aware of the humidity level, so that, for example, on my big aquarium, I'm gonna insert a video here somewhere, during winter, like, I can get away using terracotta pots, as you can see in some of the plants, because the humidity will be higher. But I also need to put some water around it because it's an enclosed space, much smaller than a room. The humidity stays around 70-80% for the most part consistently, which means I don't have to water as often. And those plants are conditioned and happy that way. I don't touch them, I leave them be. I prefer, for my environment, plastic pots, just because they retain, or plastic, or if you have orchidea pots, I wish I could find them because I like when the pots are transparent. Orchidea pots are usually transparent, retain the water just as well as plastic. I prefer plastic pots because of my specific situation, and I can also use a chunky mix, which to me is just easier to manage, but to each their own. My plants in Brazil, which is where a lot of these guys come from, so this is the gloriosum, they will, well, because it rains a lot more, most of my plants are under the weather.
Essa daqui, tá vendo? Ó.
Also, you know, native.
Agora essa daqui, Júlia.
Essa,
as outras ali, ó. Elas.
We have a huge one actually, and I can get away with just using whatever soil because nature does its thing, and I don't have to worry. My mom doesn't have to worry too much about it. But let's talk about the mix that I use here in Finland. It's not the only good mix out there. You have to test what works best for you and adapt and see how your plants respond after 6 months. I think anything less than that, the bigger the plant, the slower it will be to sort of adapt to a new mix. I don't know why. I have my theory, but I'm not a botanist, I'm not gonna talk about it. So I got here my gloriosum, which is looking fancy, putting a new leaf. It's kind of heavy because it's watered, and it is in a potato salad. Yeah. Not sponsored. I feel like I have to say it. I keep a lot of my baby plants in a potato salad pot because it's a transparent pot, and the lid works as a, you know, whatever works, whatever floats your boat. This is what works for me right now. Let's do a thumbnail. So, the soil on this gloriosum, you can kind of see it, that it is quite the chunko. Let me see if I can get it focused. At the bottom, I got some stones. About this much is just stones. All my plants, I do that, especially the ones that stay in the aquarium, because I will put water in the bottom sometimes, and this prevents the soil from sucking up and leaving over watered. I got one part of everything. It's what works best for me, and here is the list. I use one part of everything because it works the best for me, but you can test it. You should test it. So some of the things that will affect what kind of pot you use, what kind of ratio you use on things, is of course temperature and then humidity. If, for example, it's warm above 25 degrees, it's likely, and dry, it's likely that you are going to need a little bit less chunky soil. I think the coco coir works great for me. I've started adding this, and it retains the humidity for a little bit longer in the soil. I shouldn't use the word humidity referring to the soil, but it retains the water for longer for my plants, which means that I don't overwater them. Kind of weird to think about, but that's kind of how it works, because if they dry too fast and then you are watering it too often, you're going to overwater it anyway. So if you have a place that is warmer and higher humidity, you can get by just putting a lot of, I've seen some people using just coco coir and bark with a little bit of worm humus, or just the soil with actual worms. In Brazil, when you buy plants, often you will have kind of like a muddy mix and some coir and some bark and then an actual worm in it. So let me know if you have questions. Let me know if you need help. I only know of brands here in Finland that I can recommend. Another thing that people always have discussions with is, do you need a humidifier? Do you need clay pebbles? Do you need is spray enough? And I have very strong opinions about it. First, because I experienced kind of like the two extremes of it, seeing it in Brazil, seeing it here in Finland, super cold country, super hot country. And if you want to keep the humidity anywhere above the 50s or the 40s, the 40s is like the threshold of like it's getting a bit too dry, even for you, for your own health, you want a humidifier. Because there is a thing called relative humidity. It's not whatever meter you have, it's measuring the air around that specific area, right? So relative humidity works, if you have a humidifier, the humidifier will show the relative humidity around the humidifier. So if you want your whole room to be humid, you're gonna have to crank it up a lot more than, so that you have a more dispersed humidity. So can you raise the relative humidity around a single plant by putting clay pebbles? Yeah, you can. Does spritzing do anything? It does for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, depending how dry your air is. I only spritz the moss poles, which I've been using the moss poles, but at this point when it's starting to get so dry here, I just put it under the water because it's really not going to do anything. It doesn't penetrate the moss enough to actually keep it moist for long so that the roots can really grab on them. And the roots are grabbing because I think I water those moss poles twice a week during the drier season, and the humidifier is now showing 81% because it's a rainy day. But if I look at the hygrometer, which is a little meter that is on top of my small terrarium, it's probably gonna show something around 60% because just that short, maybe like a little over a meter distance, the humidity changes. So relative humidity and humidity in itself, it's not a thing, it's relative humidity. Always, any humidity meter is gonna show relative humidity. If you go to an ocean, like to a shore of an ocean or a body of water, you're gonna feel the difference in temperature, you're gonna feel the difference in the actual humidity. If you walk in a forest in Brazil, which I have in Rio many times because that's where we like doing our trails, just to actually see these guys in nature, you will not feel hot inside the forest, but you're gonna sweat profusely because the relative humidity is so high because of the amount of plants there are in the environment. So it's a lot, and because of the soil and the perspiration, all of that stuff. But if you want a more reliable, it's not 100% reliable because like I said, it's gonna be, the relative humidity is gonna be a lot higher around the device. If you want a more reliable system, buy a humidifier. Just go for it. They are not that expensive and they are good for your health, okay? Don't buy one that is just warm water. Buy one that you can actually use both because the humidity will keep the place really, really warm. The feeling will not, if you are just sitting down, it's not gonna feel warm, but if you start walking and doing stuff, it's gonna feel very, very hot. And they usually are filter based, which are a lot easier to clean and keep decent. I've had one that didn't have a filter. It was just a nightmare to clean. It would get scaly everywhere and it's just, no. Where have I been? Let's go to the non-planty stuff right now. Where have I been? What have I been doing? I've been working a lot. That's the truth of it. I've been doing my marketing stuff. I recently actually started my brand all over again, and I'm starting to split my interests in different channels. And because my personal brand, I go by just my name, the Julia Braga, I decided, well, if I'm gonna talk about plants and if I'm gonna do this consistently, I'm gonna make it part of it all. I might not be interested in marketing, people in marketing might not be interested in plants. I decided to just split things up and make it more like you can choose what you watch instead of just shoving it down your throat, I guess. Which is not nice. But if you're into marketing, if you want to learn more about what I do, I specifically do launch strategies, which is not exactly marketing per se. It's more like business development meets branding meets marketing in a way as well. It is part of it. I don't have space yet. Bye. My road. I am out of practice with those videos, with these kind of like fun hobby videos. I am in such a business mode all the time.